The wind screamed across Red Mesa as Wade, Langston drove his spurs into his horse's flanks, racing toward the smoke curling above the ridge. Something was wrong, he could feel it in the way. The ground trembled beneath the hooves, in the way the crows circled low, as if waiting for death to finish its work. He reached the crest and froze. 7 figures hung from a crude gallows built atop an old ritual mound, their bodies still swaying. For one terrible heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Wade saw it, a twitch, a tremor, a barely there gasp from one of the women. They were alive, barely but alive. He leapt from the saddle before the horse even stopped, sprinting toward the structure. His knife was out in a flash, slicing the first rope. The woman collapsed into his arms, her skin cold, her breath rattling. He lowered her gently and rushed to the next. One by one, he cut the rope's fingers burning, lungs aching, until all 7 lay on the ground, half-conscious, bruised, but breathing. Who did this? Wade demanded, but the women could barely speak. Only one, a young woman with sharp black eyes, forced out a whisper. Not bandits, not drifters, men from the bank, railroad men. Then she fell into unconsciousness. Before Wade could gather his thoughts, gunshots cracked from the canyon below. Bullets kicked dust at his boots. He dove behind a boulder and drew his revolver. 3 riders in dark coats were closing in, rifles ready. One of them shouted, "Finish the job. Leave no witnesses, not the Apache, not the rancher." Wade's jaw clenched. So this wasn't random violence, this was a purge. Someone powerful wanted these women dead. And now they wanted him dead too. He fired first. The nearest rider toppled from his saddle. The other 2 split apart, circling, shooting wildly. Wade rolled down the slope, grabbed a fallen rifle, and returned fire. The second rider howled as a bullet tore through his leg. The third turned to flee, but Wade wasn't about to let him report back. One precise shot, and the man slumped over his horse's neck. Silence. Only the wind remained. Wade staggered back up the hill, chest heaving. The 7 women lay where he left them, fragile but alive. He looked at their faces, strangers, yet victims of something far bigger than a simple ambush. This wasn't meant to scare anyone, Wade muttered. This was meant to erase you. He didn't know why. Not yet. But he was going to find out. Red Mesa had blood on its hands, and Wade, Langston, was about to drag the truth into the light, no matter who tried to bury it again. Night settled over Red Mesa like a heavy blanket as Wade Langston dragged the injured women into the abandoned line shack he sometimes used for storing supplies. The desert air dropped fast, and the women, still trembling from the nooses, needed warmth before anything else. Wade built a fire, fed them water, and checked their bruised throats. The rope burns were deep, raw, and blistered. Whoever hung them had not intended survival. Hours passed before the first of them could sit up. Her name, she whispered, was Nira, the leader among them, though barely older than 20. Her voice was hoarse, each word scraping from her damaged throat, but her eyes burned with stubborn life. They came before dawn, she rasped. Men with papers. They said our land was no longer ours, that we had signed it away, but no one signed anything. My mother kept our documents hidden. She said the white men were changing them. Wade frowned. Forged deeds. He'd heard rumors in town talk of the Frontier Bank pushing through land transfers that didn't smell right. He never bothered to dig deeper. Now he wished he had. Another woman stirred, coughing weakly. They burned the council lodge, she said. We ran. They caught us. Said we were witnesses that needed to disappear. Wade clenched his fists. So the attack wasn't random. It was a purge. Executed cleanly, quietly, with no bodies expected to be found. if he hadn't ridden past that smoke. Nira caught his gaze. You saved us, but they will return. They will finish what they started. Wade looked to the cracked door, listening for hoofbeats in the night. Nothing yet, but trouble wasn't far behind. The men who ambushed him weren't drifters. Their rifles were too polished, their coats too similar. They were hired, hand-trained, organized, confident. What do they want with Apache land? Wade asked. Nira exchanged looks with the others. Fear radiated through the room. They found silver, she whispered. A vein running under Red Mesa. Enough to make the railroad change its route. Enough to make powerful men kill. Wade exhaled sharply. Greed that explained everything and nothing. If the railroad wanted the ground, they didn't need to erase an entire people. But banks, politicians, railroad barons, once they joined forces, loves became dust under their boots. Nira's fingers tightened around his wrist. If we do nothing, everyone will die. Our elders, our children. You saw the nooses. They want our nation gone. Wade met her gaze. A silent pact formed between them, unspoken but unbreakable. He could walk away, pretend he never found them, but the memory of those hanging bodies would never fade. Then we fight, he said quietly, and the fire crackled as if answering. By dawn, Wade had made up his mind. Staying in the shack would get them all killed. They needed allies, information, and a place the bank's hired guns couldn't reach so quickly. His ranch lay 2 hours west, isolated, defensible, and stocked with supplies. It was their best chance. Before they left, Wade stepped outside to scan the horizon. The early light revealed fresh tracks in the dust, multiple horses passing through the canyon shortly after the ambush. The riders had circled, searching, hunting, and they weren't far. Wade saddled his horse and helped the women onto 2 pack mules he managed to salvage from the shack. Nira insisted on walking at first, but her legs buckled after only a few steps. Wade caught her, guiding her into the saddle. You must survive, he told her. The truth dies without a voice. Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. They rode in silence, weaving through dry gullies and narrow passes. Wade knew these paths better than most. The land had been his only companion for years. But today, the familiar terrain felt hostile. Every rock a potential sniper's perch. Every shadow hiding a rifle barrel. Halfway to the ranch, they reached an overlook. From there, they saw dust rising behind them, 3 riders moving fast. They found us, one of the women whispered. No, Wade muttered, studying the movement. They're searching, but not for us. Not yet. Below, the riders dismounted near the creek. One of them held a map. Another drove a metal stake into the ground, marking territory. Wade recognized the insignia on their coats, the Frontier Bank Security Division. They weren't chasing. They were surveying. Nira's breath caught. They mean to divide the land before we are even buried. Wade's jaw tightened. They're building their case. If they mark it on paper, the law will listen to them before it listens to you. Nira stared at him. Then we must gather evidence. Real evidence, witnesses, documents. And we will, Wade promised. But first we survive. They pushed onward, leaving the riders and their survey lines behind. By the time the sun reached its peak, Wade's ranch appeared rugged, lonely, but safe. Or as safe as anything could be now. As he helped the women inside, Wade felt the weight settling onto his shoulders. This wasn't just about saving 7 survivors anymore. This was about exposing a machine of corruption powerful enough to crush nations. And Wade Langston had just placed himself directly in its path. Wade's ranch had always been a quiet cattle lowing in the distance, the creak of the porch boards beneath his boots. But now every sound felt sharpened, heightened, as if the land itself sensed the storm approaching. The 7 rescued women rested inside, but Wade remained awake, pacing the yard, checking the horizon again and again. Just before noon, hoofbeats echoed faintly across the open plain. Wade reached for his rifle, then relaxed slightly as the rider came into view. It was Sheriff Tom Greeley, an old friend. Or at least he used to be. These days, it was hard to know where anyone's loyalties lay. Greeley reined in his horse near the gate. His eyes were tired, his face drawn, and when he spoke, his voice carried something Wade had never heard from him before: fear. "Heard there was trouble near Red Mesa yesterday," the sheriff said. "Folks said they saw smoke. You weren't anywhere near it. Were you?" Wade met his gaze without flinching. "I was." Greeley exhaled sharply, shoulders sinking. "Wade, you need to be real careful what you say next. The frontier bank's been breathing down the county's neck. Railroad men too. They're claiming Apache rebels attacked a survey crew. They're spreading word of violent resistance, trying to justify whatever comes next." Wade stepped closer. "They hung 7 unarmed women." "That's what happened." The sheriff's eyes widened, but he didn't look surprised, only resigned. "I figured it was bad, but not that bad." He rubbed his temples, lowering his voice. "Listen, Wade, you didn't hear this from me, but there's a meeting tonight at the mayor's office. Bank officials, railroad lawyers, county commissioners. They're planning to finalize new land deeds and send federal marshals to secure Apache territory." "Secure," Wade growled. "You mean displace?" Greeley didn't deny it. "If those women are alive, you need to keep them hidden. If the bank learns they can testify, they'll send more than hired shooters." Wade's grip tightened on his rifle. "I need proof. Something real. Documents, letters, anything that ties these bastards to the hangings." The sheriff hesitated long enough to reveal how dangerous the idea was. "There might be something." He leaned closer. "Frontier Bank keeps all its land deeds in the office vault. And I've seen a ledger. Payments, bribes, names you wouldn't believe." Wade's pulse quickened. "Evidence, at last. How do I get in?" he asked. Greeley looked away. "That's the part I can't help with. If I get caught, they'll bury me." He turned his horse, then paused. "But Wade, the vault clerk leaves at sundown. And there's a back window with a busted latch." Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. When the sheriff rode away, Wade returned to the house. Nira was awake, sitting upright, watching him with unreadable intensity. "You spoke to someone," she said. Wade nodded. "And tonight we're going after the truth." The sky over Red Mesa darkened into a deep copper dusk by the time Wade, Nira, and 2 of the stronger women, Tala and Isku, set out toward town. They rode light and silent, cloaks drawn, every sense alert. The trail into Redstone wasn't long, but tonight it felt like walking into the mouth of a rattlesnake. Redstone itself buzzed with unusual energy. Extra lanterns were lit around the town hall. Wagons belonging to bank and railroad officials lined the street. Men in tailored suits and polished boots stood on porches, smoking cigars as if celebrating before the fight even began. "These are the men who tried to kill us?" Tala whispered, her voice shaking with anger. "Not with their own hands," Nira answered. "But they ordered it. Which is worse." Wade kept them hidden in the alleys as they approached. The Frontier Bank building, 2-story structure with stone columns and a polished brass plaque that gleamed, even in the dark. On the surface, it looked respectable. Inside, Wade knew, was rot. They circled to the back, stopping beneath the window the sheriff had mentioned. The latch was indeed broken. Wade pushed it open quietly and climbed inside first. The office was empty, rows of desks, shelves of documents, and the heavy steel vault door looming at the far end like a sleeping beast. Tala and Isku slipped inside next, Nira last. Her throat was still bruised, but her eyes were sharper than any blade. "We need 3 things," Wade whispered. "Land deeds, payment ledgers, and letters. Anything linking the bank, railroad, and county officials." They moved fast, scanning drawers, cabinets, and stacks of paperwork. Wade found a map showing new property lines that cut straight through. A patchy territory as if the people living there didn't exist. Isku uncovered a folder of foreclosure notices issued to families who had never taken a loan. Tala found envelopes sealed with the railroad's emblem. But it was Naira who discovered the most damning item. She held up a leather-bound ledger. Inside were names, dates, and transactions, large payments to county commissioners, deputies, even the mayor. And next to each entry, Land Acquisition Initiative. "This is it," Wade whispered. "This proves they paid for the hangings." Suddenly footsteps. Voices. The door handle rattled. Wade froze. Naira clenched the ledger against her chest. Someone was entering the bank. They had seconds, maybe less. Wade pointed to the window. "Go, now." Tala and Isku climbed through first. Naira hesitated, just long enough for Wade to see the fire in her eyes, the refusal to run ever again. He grabbed her hand and practically pushed her toward the window. The door swung open behind him. "Who's in here?" A man barked. Wade dove through the window as gunshots exploded behind him. They hit the ground running. And behind them, the entire town of Redstone woke to the alarm. Tonight, Wade Langston wasn't just protecting 7 survivors. He was stealing the truth. They didn't stop running until the lights of Redstone were distant flickers. Behind them, Wade forced the group into a dry ravine, hidden beneath jagged stone walls. Only when they crouched in the shadow of the cliffs did he allow them to breathe. Naira clutched the ledger to her chest like a newborn. Her hands trembled, though she hid it well. Tala and Isku gasped for air, their legs shaking from the sprint. Wade listened, straining for hoofbeats, shouts, anything that meant the chase had begun. A horn blared in the distance. Then another. "They know," Isku whispered. "They know we were inside." Wade wiped sweat from his brow. "They know someone broke in. But with luck, they didn't see our faces." Tala peered over the rocks. "What do we do now?" Wade looked at Naira. "We bring this ledger somewhere it can't be buried. Somewhere the law still means something." Naira nodded slowly. "Fort Carson. The federal post. That's 2 days north," Wade muttered. "And the railroad cuts through the open flats. They'll track us easy. Not if we take the old canyon trail," Naira said. Her voice, still hoarse, carried the certainty of someone who grew up with the land itself. "It splits into blind passes. Even good trackers get lost there." Wade considered this, then gave a curt nod. Decision made. They traveled under moonlight, following the jagged spine of the mesa. Hours passed in tense silence until the adrenaline faded and the pain set in. Naira stumbled once, catching herself on Wade's arm. The bruises on her throat looked darker now, the marks raw and angry. "You need rest," Wade said softly. She shook her head. "Rest later. Justice now." He couldn't help but admire her, though he also worried she was pushing beyond her limits. By dawn, they reached Wade's ranch. He led the women inside, but before entering himself, he paused. Something was wrong. The horses were restless. The air held the faint tang of gun oil, fresh gun oil. Wade signaled for silence, then crept along the porch. Through a side window, he saw movement inside. A shadow, 2 shadows. Armed men searching his home. They'd come for the women. For the ledger. For him. Naira appeared beside him, eyes narrowed. "We can't stay here." "No," he whispered. "But I'm not letting them take my land without a fight." He motioned for the women to circle behind the barn while he slipped toward a side door. The handle was cracked open, proof the intruders had forced it. Inside, Wade moved like a ghost. He knew every board, every creak. One man rummaged through cabinets. Another kicked over crates, cursing. They must have fled, one spat. Boss said the rancher's protecting them. Wade lifted the butt of his rifle. One decisive strike. The man dropped silently. The second spun around too slow. Wade fired once. The man collapsed. Silence. Wade didn't smile, didn't breathe. He knew this was only the beginning. He hurried outside. We leave now. They'll send more. Dust rolled across the courthouse yard as Wade stepped outside, clutching the stolen ledger against his chest. The pages inside were the last missing, link proof that the frontier, bank and the railroad had orchestrated the entire scheme long before the Apache resistance began. But he felt eyes on him, the kind that promised trouble. A shadow shifted near the water tower. Another figure leaned against a post, pretending to smoke. Wade kept walking, forcing his steps steady, but every instinct screamed danger. He reached his horse, slid the ledger beneath the saddle flap, and mounted slowly. The street was too quiet. No merchants calling, no wagons rattling, just wind and a tension sharp enough to cut through leather. When Wade nudged his horse forward, the first shot cracked. Wood splintered beside his shoulder. Wade kicked hard, bolting down the street as gunfire erupted from both sides. Men in Duster's railroad mercenaries charged after him. Wade leaned low over the saddle, weaving through crates and overturned barrels. A bullet grazed his arm, burning through flesh. He gritted his teeth and kept riding. Behind him, riders closed in, shouting orders. They wanted the ledger. They wanted silence. And they wanted it now. 2 riders flanked him. Wade yanked the reins, pulling into a tight alley too narrow for both pursuers. One crashed into a wall. The other fired wildly, missing by inches. Wade shot once clean, controlled. The man toppled from his horse. Bursting out the far end of the alley, Wade saw the open desert ahead. If he reached the ridge, he could lose them in the canyons. He pushed the horse harder, feeling its muscles strain, hearing shouts fade behind him. But just as he glimpsed safety, a lasso snapped around his torso, dragging him off the saddle. He hit the ground hard, air knocked from his lungs. A mercenary towered above him, boots crunching in the dirt. That ledger belongs to the railroad, the man growled. Wade spat blood and reached for his revolver, but the mercenary kicked it away. Before the man could strike again, an arrow whistled through the air and dropped him instantly. Wade rolled to his side and looked up to see Nera and 2 Apache women emerging from the rocks, bows drawn. "You're late," Wade muttered. Nera offered her hand. "You're welcome." They retrieved the ledger, mounted up, and rode toward the canyon. Behind them, more riders appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the burning sky. The chase wasn't over, not even close. The truth was finally within reach, and the men hunting them would stop at nothing to bury it forever. The hollow beneath the cliffs offered a moment's peace, but only a moment. The canyon walls hummed with the faint echo of approaching riders, distant, scattered but organized. Wade studied the pathways branching from the hollow like veins, each one a possible escape or a trap. "We head north," he decided. "There's an abandoned telegraph station near the ridge. If the wires are intact, we can send a message ahead to Fort Carson. Warn them we're coming." Tala frowned. "Will they believe us?" "They'll believe official evidence," Wade said, tapping the saddlebag that now held the ledger. "And if they don't, they'll believe me when I tell them men are dying over it." Nera touched the canyon wall, tracing a symbol carved generations ago, circles within circles, the sign for watchfulness. "Our ancestors hid here for protection, but they also knew this place can trap the unwary." Wade nodded. "That's why we keep moving." They climbed out of the hollow and into the northern pass. the trail twisting sharply upward. Loose rocks skittered beneath their boots. The air grew thinner, colder, but the view unfolded wider with every step. A rolling sea of desert and distant mountains bathed in a pale morning light. Halfway up, a thunderous crack tore through the air. A shot. Close. Wade shoved Nira aside as a bullet sparked off the stone beside her face. Down! He barked. The group ducked, scrambling for cover behind a cluster of boulders. Wade spotted the sniper on a ledge across the ravine. One man, lying prone, rifle glinting. Railroad marksman, Wade growled. They're getting serious. Nira peered from behind the rock. Can we reach him? Not without wings. Another shot slammed into the boulder, sending fragments spraying over them. Tyla winced as a shard cut her cheek. Wade scanned the canyon. The ledge was too far for his revolver, too high for a safe climb. But then he noticed the overhang above the sniper cracked, thin, held together by stubborn luck. He grabbed Isku's arm. Give me your rope. Isku didn't question, she tossed him a coil. Wade tied a loop, swung it, and cast it upward. The rope snagged a jutting rock high on the wall. What are you doing? Nira hissed. Wade tightened the rope around his chest. Changing the angle, he pulled himself upward, scaling the vertical face as bullets cracked beneath his feet. One shot grazed his boot, spinning him sideways. He slammed his shoulder against the stone but held on, climbing higher. Finally, he reached a narrow perch. From here, he could see the sniper clearly focused, steady, unaware that Wade now had the advantage of height. Wade drew his revolver. One shot. A clean, echoing strike. The marksman toppled from the ledge, rifle clattering down the ravine. Wade climbed back to the group, sweat mingling with dust on his brow. Tala exhaled shakily. You could have died. Wade shrugged. We all could. But not today. The trail wound upward until the canyon opened, onto a high plateau overlooking the northern desert. Wind whipped against them, carrying the faint metallic scent of an incoming storm. Far ahead, perched on a tilted rise of rock, stood the abandoned telegraph station, weather-beaten, leaning slightly, but still standing like a stubborn relic of the old frontier. Wade approached cautiously. Stay back until I check inside. The building creaked under his boots. Dust coated the floor in thick layers. A broken chair lay overturned near the window. The telegraph machine sat on a desk, rusted but recognizable. Wade brushed away dirt from the sounder. The wires ran out through a hole in the wall and disappeared north toward Fort Carson. He tugged gently on the line. Intact. A rare stroke of luck. He motioned the others in. If this still works, we can send a coded alert. Nira stepped beside him. Will the soldiers understand? Yes, my father served at Carson. He taught me the federal distress codes. She touched the machine carefully, reverently. Then send it. Before they find us again. Wade tapped the key. Short bursts. Long pulses. The urgency in every strike echoed through the lonely station. Apache territory under attack. Bank and railroad conspiracy. Evidence in hand. Request immediate marshal support. Wade Langston. He repeated the message 3 times. Then 4. Silence followed. Minutes crawled. Sweat beaded on Wade's neck. The women watched him, waiting, hoping. Then, click. A faint reply tapped through the sounder. Message received. Hold position. Marshal team en route. Nira's breath trembled with relief. Tala hugged Isku tightly. The first spark of hope since the gallows ignited in their eyes. Wade allowed himself a small smile. Help is coming, but the moment shattered as a rifle cracked outside. The bullet tore through the station wall, splintering wood inches from Wade's head. He hit the floor. They found us. Shadows moved outside 6, maybe 7 riders circling the station. More than before. Better armed, determined. Nera crawled to the far window. They're surrounding us. Wade grabbed his rifle. We hold them off until the marshals arrive. How long? Tala asked, voice trembling. An hour, Wade guessed. Maybe 2. Isku tightened her jaw. Then we fight an hour. We fight 2. We fight until the truth stands. Gunfire erupted, rattling the station walls. Wade returned fire through a gap in the boards. A rider fell. Another ducked behind a boulder. The women took positions. Nera with the revolver Wade had taught her to use. Tala with a carbine scavenged from earlier. Isku with a hatchet ready for close combat. Outside, the riders fanned out. Inside, the defenders braced themselves. The telegraph line hummed behind them, carrying the truth northward. And Wade Langston knew one thing with absolute certainty. This battle would decide whether justice arrived in time, or whether Red Mesa's truth would die with them. The telegraph station shook with every bullet. Dust rained from the rafters, boards split, and the air filled with the sharp stench of gunpowder. Wade ducked behind an overturned desk, firing through a narrow crack just as a rider charged across the open ground. His shot connected the man toppled, skidding into the dirt. But for every enemy that fell, 2 more took his place. Nera crouched beside the far window, gripping her revolver tight. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Her throat bruised, her breaths ragged. Still, every shot she took was controlled, precise. She had become the symbol of what they were fighting for, a people refusing to be erased. Tala and Isku guarded the door, using the broken wall panels as cover. A volley of gunfire slammed into their barricade, shaking it violently. Tala cried out as a splinter tore across her arm, but she didn't retreat. She swung her carbine around the corner and returned fire. "Wade!" Isku shouted. "They're regrouping." He risked a glance outside. The riders were pulling back slightly, forming a tighter formation, preparing for a decisive charge. "They're going to rush us," Wade muttered. All at once, Nera wiped blood from her cheek. "Then we end it before they reach the door." Wade looked at her, this bruised, battered survivor holding the ledger. That could save her people, and something inside him crystallized. He wasn't fighting for himself anymore. He wasn't fighting for his ranch, or pride, or revenge. He was fighting for them. For justice. For what the West should have been. The sound of hooves rumbled like thunder. Shouts echoed through the canyon wind. Wade braced his rifle. Positions. The riders charged. The station exploded into chaos. Bullets shattered the windows. Horses thundered past the walls. Wade fired until the barrel burned his hands, dropping 2, 3 riders before they could close the distance. Tala's shots ricocheted through the dust. Isku hurled her hatchet at a man climbing the porch railing. He fell backward, screaming. But there were too many. One rider kicked in the half-broken door. Wade tackled him, fists slamming into bone, grappling in the dust until the rifle slid away. Another rider burst in through the rear window, grabbing Nera by the arm. She twisted, slammed the butt of her revolver into his jaw, and fired point blank. He collapsed at her feet. Still, more shadows filled the doorway. Wade fought through the haze, his knuckles bloody, his breath ragged. He threw the door shut and jammed a beam against the handles. "Report!" He shouted. "I'm alive," Tala gasped. "Alive," Isku echoed. Nera met Wade's gaze, eyes blazing. "They won't stop. Not until every witness is dead." Wade pushed a fresh round into his rifle. "Then we buy time until the marshals get here. We don't know if they're coming," Tala whispered. "We know," Wade said firmly. "Because if they don't, this ledger dies. The truth dies. And so does the West they claim to protect." The attackers charged a second time harder, fiercer. desperate to end the fight before federal lawmen arrived. Their boots hammered the earth, their gunfire roared like wildfire, and the telegraph station groaned under the relentless assault. Glass shattered, beams cracked. The entire structure felt ready to collapse. Wade, bleeding from a cut above his brow, shoved a cabinet against the broken window just as bullets tore through it. "Hold steady. They're weakening the walls." Nera crouched beside him, clutching the ledger. Her voice rasped, but her resolve was steel. "If the marshals don't come in time." "They will," Wade insisted, though fear crawled up his spine. "They have to." Isku suddenly froze. "Listen." A distant echo drifted over the plateau. Not gunfire, not horses, a horn. A federal cavalry horn. Tala's eyes widened. "They're close." But the riders outside heard it too, and panic drove them into a frenzy. They surged at the station in a final brutal assault. One man smashed through the window frame. Another kicked aside the barricade at the door. Wade swung his rifle like a club, cracking it against a raider's skull. Nera fired her last bullet into a man lunging for Tala. Isku tackled another attacker to the ground, wrestling for control of his knife. The station was collapsing into splintered wood and violence. Then, a deafening blast shook the earth. The raiders froze. Wade froze. A line of federal marshals rode over the ridge, rifles raised, badges gleaming in the morning sun. Behind them, 2 cavalry wagons thundered across the flats. Their leader, a tall marshal with a scar across his jaw, stood in the saddle. "Drop your weapons," he boomed. The raiders hesitated for a single breath. Then the marshals opened fire. The fight ended in seconds. Riders tumbled. Horses scattered. The few who survived dropped their rifles and raised trembling hands. Dust settled over the field like a shroud. Wade staggered out of the station, Nera beside him. The marshal dismounted, striding toward them with quick, purposeful steps. "Langston?" he asked. Wade nodded. "You sent the message?" "Yes," Wade said, pointing to Naira. "And she carries the evidence." Nera stepped forward, holding out the ledger with bruised but steady hands. The marshal flipped it open. His eyes hardened. "This," he muttered. "This is enough to hang half the county." "Good," Naira whispered. "Let them feel the noose they gave us." The marshal bowed his head to her, not as a soldier, but as a man acknowledging courage beyond measure. "Your people will have justice. I swear it." For the first time since the gallows, Nera allowed herself a breath of relief. Over the next hours, more cavalry arrived, rounding up the remaining raiders. Frontier Bank officials fled Redstone, only to be captured by marshals at the rail depot. The mayor and commissioners were arrested by noon. The conspiracy collapsed like a rotten scaffold. And when it was over, the wind slammed against the broken boards of Frank Miller's barn, howling like a wounded animal as he fought to keep the last surviving Mare on her feet. Snow burst through the gaps in violent gusts, stinging his eyes, freezing his breath before it left his lips. The lantern beside him flickered, then died, swallowed by the blizzard raging outside. Darkness took over, heavy and absolute. "Come on, girl. Stay with me," Frank muttered, pressing his shoulder against the trembling horse. The animal's legs buckled again. He could feel her ribs shaking beneath his hands, the fever burning through her like wildfire. Another one sick. Another one lost, if he failed tonight. The storm roared harder, as if mocking him. Frank's own injured leg throbbed sharply, threatening to fold under his weight. The bullet wound months old, still refusing to heal, made every movement a battle. But if he let this Mare fall, the ranch would lose its last breeding animal. It would be the final nail in the coffin. A blast of icy wind ripped the barn door open. Frank lunged to catch it and froze. A figure stood in the doorway, snow swirling around her like she'd been carved out of the storm itself. A woman, wrapped in a threadbare cloak, cheeks raw from the cold, clutching a small worn suitcase against her chest. Her eyes wide, steady, impossibly calm, locked onto his. "Mr. Miller?" Her voice shook, but not from fear. "I'm Hope Alden, your Christmas bride." For a moment, Frank wondered if the blizzard had finally driven him to hallucinations. He had written to the agency months ago, in a moment of loneliness and desperation, and then forgotten about it when the ranch began to collapse piece by piece. He'd never expected a reply. Certainly not this. The Mare let out a weak cry and collapsed onto her side. Hope didn't hesitate. Dropping her suitcase, she rushed forward and knelt in the hay beside the horse. Her hands moved with quick, practiced certainty, checking the gums, feeling the pulse, lifting the eyelids. "She's dehydrated, fevered, but she can be saved," Hope said, determination sharpening her voice. I used to assist a doctor back home. Let me help." Frank stared at her, stunned not by her arrival, but by the steady fire in her tone, a fire he hadn't heard in his own voice for years. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, for the first time in a long time, something else stirred. A spark of hope. The blizzard eased by morning, but the cold inside the Miller barn lingered like a warning. Frank hadn't slept. He sat against the stall wall with the recovering Mare's head resting in his lap, while Hope worked tirelessly through the night. She moved with an odd blend of gentleness and precision, mixing herbs she'd carried in small paper envelopes, boiling water over a tiny flame she'd nursed from near nothing, whispering steady reassurances to the frightened animal. When dawn finally bled across the snow, Frank felt the Mare's breathing slow into a calmer rhythm. "You kept her alive," he murmured, unable to hide the awe in his voice. Hope didn't smile. Not yet. She wiped her hands on her skirt, leaving faint smudges of medicine and soot. "She's not out of danger, but she's fighting now. And that means something." Frank pushed himself to his feet, his leg burning like fire. Hope noticed instantly. "You should sit," she said. "Can't, too much to fix." He stepped outside the barn, and Hope followed. The view before them looked like ruin itself, the fences buried in drifts, the fields dead beneath sheets of ice. The chicken coop roof caved in from snow weight. A lifetime of work, broken in half a season. Hope's gaze swept the land, but instead of despair, Frank saw calculation in her eyes, thoughtful, searching. "How long has it been like this?" she asked quietly. "Since the drought," he said. "Then the sickness. Then winter came early. Everything hit at once." "And you handled it alone?" "I tried." She studied him, and Frank felt exposed under that steady look. Not judged, understood somehow. "No one can carry that much burden and stay standing," she said. "But you did." He didn't know how to answer that, so he didn't. Instead, he nodded toward the house. "You should come inside. Warm up, eat something. You must be half frozen." Hope hesitated, as if unsure she had the right. "Thank you, Mr. Miller." "It's Frank," he said. "If you're staying, we might as well start with that." Her eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "All right, Frank." The name felt different coming from her, lighter somehow. But the fragile moment broke when a sudden cracking sound split the air. Frank's attention snapped toward the old water tower on the hill. A support beam had shifted, listing dangerously. "Damn, if that goes, we lose the whole supply." He grabbed his coat, ignoring Hope's concerned frown, and started toward the hill. "Frank, wait, your leg." "Little hold." But as he took another step, Hope hurried after him. "Then I'm coming with you." He opened his mouth to argue, but the determination in her eyes disarmed him completely. Together, They braced themselves against the wind and trudged toward the failing tower. For the first time in a long while, Frank didn't feel like he was going into a fight alone. The climb up the hill was brutal. Snow swallowed their boots with every step, and the wind tore at their coats as if trying to shove them back down. Frank grit his teeth through the pain in his injured leg, determined not to stumble in front of Hope, but she kept a steady pace beside him, matching his stride without complaint. When they reached the tower, the problem became painfully clear. One of the main beams, already weak from age, had cracked nearly clean through. With enough pressure from the wind or weight from the ice, the entire structure could collapse. Frank ran a hand along the split wood, his frustration simmering. "I was going to fix this weeks ago. Then everything else went wrong." Hope inspected the beam with surprising confidence. "We need reinforcement. Something to brace it until you can replace it properly." He glanced at her, impressed despite himself. "You know your way around more than just medicine. I grew up helping my father repair half our town's problems," she said with a small shrug. "When something's broken, you learn to fix it or you lose it." Frank nodded to himself. That was a language he understood. They worked quickly, scavenging spare planks from a nearby shed and aligning them against the damaged beam. Hope held the boards steady while Frank hammered them into place. His leg trembled, sending sharp jolts of pain up his thigh. But he forced himself to keep going. At one point, the hammer slipped from his numb fingers. Before he could reach for it, Hope stepped in, placing her gloved hand over his. "Let me," she said softly. He hesitated, pride flickering, but finally stepped aside. Hope took the hammer, her motions confident and sure as she drove the nails home. The rhythmic strikes echoed across the frozen land, steady and unshaken. When she finished, Frank tested the support beam. Solid, safe for now. "You saved it," he said. "We saved it," she corrected. As they descended the hill, the storm clouds finally began to break apart. Sunlight filtered through, casting long golden streaks across the snow. Frank hadn't seen the ranch in sunlight for weeks. Under its glow, even the broken fences and ice-heavy roofs looked less like failures and more like challenges waiting to be met. "You came here expecting a husband," he said, surprising himself with the honesty of it. "Instead, you walked straight into all this." Hope looked out across the land, the worn house, the struggling barn, the distant fields buried beneath winter, and instead of fear, her eyes filled with something else entirely. Purpose. "I came here because someone needed me," she said. "And maybe I needed this place too." Frank didn't know what to say, but for the first time in months, the weight on his chest eased. As they reached the barn, the mare lifted her head and let out a soft, steady whinny stronger than before. Hope smiled, and Frank realized something he hadn't dared admit until now. The ranch wasn't the only thing being brought back to life. The next morning brought a brittle silence, the kind that settles after a storm, but before the world remembers how to breathe again. Frank stepped outside, steam curling from his coffee tin as he scanned the ranch. The fences were still broken, the fields still frozen. But something felt different, less hopeless, more waiting. Inside the barn, Hope was already awake. Frank found her kneeling beside the mare, who now stood on shaky legs, nibbling at a handful of hay with renewed appetite. Hope murmured gentle encouragement, her voice warm enough to soften the coldest corners of the barn. "You work miracles," Frank said quietly. Hope glanced up, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Not miracles, just care. Every living fights if you give it reason." He didn't reply, but the words lodged in him. Maybe he'd stopped giving himself reason long ago. Hope stood and stretched her stiff shoulders. "What's next on the ranch? What needs us today?" U.S. The word struck him unexpectedly. "A lot," he admitted. The chicken coop collapsed. The feed stores are half ruined, and the south pasture fencing is hanging by threads. Hope considered all of it without flinching. Then we'll start where the animals need us most. Frank let out a short, incredulous laugh. You say that like you've already decided you're staying. She didn't look away. I am staying, Frank. I made a promise when I got on that train. He swallowed the sudden tightness in his throat. Hope didn't speak the word bride, but its presence hung between them like a question neither dared voice yet. Before he could respond, a harsh groan of wood split the air. Frank stiffened. The co-op. They hurried toward the structure, where snow had crushed half the roof and sealed the door shut. From inside came frantic clucking. Frank braced his shoulder against the door and pushed, gritting his teeth as pain tore through his injured leg. Frank, stop, Hope said quickly. You'll hurt yourself. These hens are all we've got left for spring laying. I can't. But Hope was already kneeling, inspecting the base of the door. She grabbed a broken rail, wedged it beneath the snow-packed edge, and leveraged her weight downward. The door cracked free. Push now, she said. Together, they forced it open, and a flurry of terrified hens burst into the snow. Hope moved fast, herding them gently, guiding them toward the open barn. Frank watched her work calm, instinctive, commanding chaos with nothing but patience and certainty. When the last hen scrambled to safety, Hope wiped the frost from her cheeks. We need a temporary shelter and a dry place for their feed, she said. Frank blinked. You already have a plan. I've had a plan since I stepped off that train, she admitted. One step at a time, remember? Frank stared at her, the truth settling in deeply. Hope wasn't just helping him survive winter. She was dragging him back into life itself. By midday, snow began melting under a pale sun, revealing the battered state of the co-op. Frank measured the splintered beams, while Hope sifted through the scattered feed bags, salvaging what she could. Most of this is usable, she said, inspecting a handful of grain. If we dry it by the stove, it won't mold. Frank nodded. I'll rebuild the coop frame. Shouldn't take more than a few days if the weather holds. Then I'll help, Hope said simply. He hesitated. It's heavy work. Hard work. I didn't come here for easy work. The conviction in her voice sent a strange warmth through him, one he wasn't prepared to feel. They began clearing debris. The rhythm of shared labor built between them. Frank lifting busted planks, Hope clearing snow and stacking salvageable pieces with surprising strength. Every so often their hands brushed, sending small jolts of awareness that neither acknowledged but both felt. When Hope paused to catch her breath, Frank found himself watching her, not out of curiosity, but out of quiet admiration. She carried exhaustion in her posture, but determination in her eyes. You know, Frank said softly, most folks would have turned back the moment they saw this place. Hope straightened, brushing off her gloves. Most folks haven't lived through worse. He studied her for a moment. What did you live through? The question hung in the air, fragile and sharp. Hope's expression shifted. Something shadowed, flickered behind her composed exterior. A town that didn't want me, she said finally. A life that didn't fit me. And people who saw my skills as a threat, not a gift. Frank frowned. Threat? Medicine saves lives. Not to those who think healing should only belong to men, she said quietly. The bitter edge in her voice told him more than the words. Frank stepped closer, not invading her space, but enough that she felt the sincerity behind his voice. Hope, I'm damn grateful you're here. And if anyone ever made you feel small for what you can do, they're fools. Her breath caught slightly, but she didn't look away. Before she could respond, a sudden distant howl carried across the hills low. Sharp, unmistakably close. Frank stiffened. Wolves. Hope's eyes snapped toward the tree line. Are the cattle safe? They will be, Frank said, reaching for his rifle, leaning against the fence. He checked the chamber with practiced speed. Stay close. They usually don't come this far down unless hunger's driven them bold. Hope picked up a lantern. Then let's go. Frank blinked, startled not by the danger, but by her fearlessness. They moved across the field, the snow crunching beneath their boots, shadows stretching long across the frozen ground. The cattle huddled nervously near the far fence, their breaths steaming in the cold air. Another howl broke through the stillness closer this time. Hope drew nearer to him, not out of fear, out of solidarity. Frank lifted his rifle, scanning the tree line. The wolves were coming. The storm eased by morning, leaving the ranch wrapped in a fragile, blinding quiet. Inside the house, the fire had burned low, its glow flickering across the wooden floor. Frank limped into the kitchen, expecting to find Hope resting after the chaos of the night, but instead, she sat at the table, the ranch ledger open in front of her, brows drawn in concentration. He froze in the doorway. "That's private," he said, sharper than he intended. Hope didn't flinch. "I know. But you're running this place on willpower alone. And willpower doesn't pay debts." She turned the book toward him. "Frank, the ranch is in worse condition than you've admitted." He closed the distance slowly, leaning on the table with both hands. "I didn't ask you to fix my problems." "No," she said quietly, "but you brought me here. And I'm not going to watch everything fall apart while you pretend nothing's wrong." Frank exhaled, the fight draining from his shoulders. "I've been trying to hold it together since the drought. The sickness, the winters. Every season takes something more." Hope's expression softened. "You've been carrying all of it alone for too long." She stood, gathering papers she'd spread across the table notes. Small sketches, a rough plan taking shape. "I think I can help. You need structure, a clear path forward, and someone who isn't afraid to tell you the truth." Frank stared at the drawings, rotating pastures, medicinal treatments, proper feed storage, and something inside him shifted. A mix of hope and fear. "You really believe this place can be saved?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "but only if we start now." He sank into a chair, rubbing his forehead. "I don't know if I have anything left to give." Hope circled the table and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Then let me give something. Let us share the burden." For a moment, neither spoke. The fire cracked softly. Outside, wind whispered against the glass. "You're not what I expected when I heard mail order bride," Frank said finally. Hope smiled faintly. "Good, I'd hate to be ordinary." The tension eased, replaced by a warm, quiet understanding. Frank nodded toward the ledger. "Show me your plan." Hope's eyes brightened. She sat beside him, pointing to each section with steady confidence. "First, we stabilize the livestock. Then we rebuild the fences. After that, we restore the soil before spring planting." Frank listened, not because he agreed with everything, but because he trusted her voice. When she finished, he let out a slow breath. "All right," he said. "We'll do it your way." Hope met his gaze. "No, our way. A partnership. Uneasy, unexpected, and exactly what both of them needed." The rest of the day passed in steady, determined work. Hope moved through the barn with purpose, checking feed levels, examining the recovering mare, and taking notes with disciplined focus. Frank repaired loose boards on the stalls, glancing at her more often than he cared to admit. Each time he found her absorbed, calm, and capable, like she had lived on this ranch far longer than a few days. When the sun dipped behind the hills, the temperature dropped sharply. Frank stepped outside to gather the tools and caught sight of Hope near the corral. staring out across the frozen fields. Snow drifted in thin sheets, the sky turning violet. "You should be inside warming up," he called. She didn't move. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "People in town, they don't trust you, or this land." Frank stopped beside her, jaw tightening. "They think I'm stubborn, that I don't listen." "Are they wrong?" Hope asked, not unkindly. He let out a breath that clouded the air. "Maybe not." Hope looked at him, her expression gentle. "Frank, people fear what's falling apart. They back away from sinking things, even if they could help. But they also follow strength, stability. If they see this ranch rising again, they'll come around." He studied her face, lit by fading daylight. "You talk like you've lived this before." "I have," she said quietly. "In the town I left, people stopped trusting me when they didn't understand my skills. I couldn't heal their fear." She shrugged. "But I can help heal this." Frank wanted to ask more, but her voice carried a finality that told him she wasn't ready. They stood in silence, listening to the wind whistle through the fence rails. Finally, Hope turned toward the barn. "Come on. The animals need settling before night." Inside, the lantern cast long, warm shadows across the stalls. Frank handed her a blanket for the mare, and their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away. For a heartbeat, the air thickened, unspoken emotions swirling like the snow outside. Hope broke the moment gently. "If we work together, we can rebuild faster than you think." Frank swallowed. "I'm starting to believe that." She smiled, small, quick, but real. "Good, because tomorrow we start early." Frank nodded, watching her move through the barn with confidence and quiet grace. She checked each animal, whispering soft reassurance. He realized with something like awe that her presence didn't just warm the ranch. It steadied him, strengthened him. As they left the barn, Hope paused at the door, eyes lifting to the dark sky. "Storm's coming again," she murmured. Frank looked at her silhouette outlined by lantern light. "Then we face it together." Hope met his gaze, and for the first time didn't look away. Outside, the wind rose, carrying snow across the night. Inside, something else took root, fragile but undeniable. A beginning. The next morning broke with a pale, icy sun that barely warmed the frost on the ground. Frank stepped outside, bracing against the sharp wind. The ranch still bore scars from winter-broken rails, half-buried tools. Weak animals moving slowly in the cold, but something had changed. Hope's plan from the night before lingered in his mind, steadying him as he surveyed the work ahead. Hope was already in the yard, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, hauling a bucket of feed toward the barn. She glanced up with a smile that carried both exhaustion and determination. "You're late," she teased. Frank snorted. "Sun's barely up." "And so are we," she said, handing him a second bucket. Together they crossed the yard. Their breath rose in clouds as they fed the cattle and checked the fences. Frank watched the way Hope moved, focused, sure-footed, unfazed by cold or hard labor. She was smaller than him, but her presence filled the space beside him with a confidence he had not known in years. When they finished tending the herd, Frank paused near the barn door. "Hope, about last night, about us working together," he hesitated, words snagging on pride and something deeper. Hope nodded, waiting. "I'm not used to leaning on anyone," he admitted. "But you're right. I need help." "You don't need help," she corrected gently. "You need a partner." Frank met her eyes. A quiet understanding passed between them, just long enough to unsettle him. Before he could say more, distant voices echoed from the road. Frank stiffened. Hope turned, squinting toward the noise. 3 townsfolk approached, bundled in coats, carrying tools over their shoulders. Frank's jaw tightened. "They're here to see whether we're failing," he muttered. Hope stepped closer. "Or maybe they're here to help. People can surprise you." Frank wasn't convinced. As the group drew near, the man in front, Tom Hargreaves, lifted a hand in greeting. "Heard the storm hit you hard," he said. "Figured you could use some extra hands." Frank stared, caught between suspicion and reluctant gratitude. Hope nudged him lightly. "Say thank you," she whispered. He did. The men spread out across the yard, fixing rails, clearing snow, checking the barn roof. Hope joined them, guiding the work with calm assurance. Frank found himself watching her again, how easily she spoke to others, how naturally people responded. After an hour of labor, one of the men approached Frank. "Your wife knows her way around a ranch," he said approvingly. Frank stiffened, unsure how to answer. Hope overheard and simply smiled, leaving the assumption uncorrected. When the helpers finally left, Frank and Hope stood alone in the quiet yard. Much of the ranch looked steadier, fences repaired, animals calmer, paths cleared. "You see?" Hope said softly. "Strength inspires trust." Frank looked at her, the cold wind brushing between them. "Maybe," he said, "but that strength is yours." Hope shook her head. "No, Frank, it's ours now." By late afternoon, the wind sharpened, scraping across the plains like a cold blade. Frank and Hope finished searing the last section of fence before turning toward the barn. Hope brushed snow from her gloves, cheeks flushed from the long day. "You worked harder than anyone I've ever seen," Frank said. Hope gave a small smile. "Hard work doesn't scare me. Losing something worth fighting for does." Her words hit deeper than she intended. And for a moment, Frank didn't know how to answer. Inside the barn, the fading sunlight bled through the wooden slats, casting warm stripes across the stalls. The mare lifted her head as they entered, stronger than she'd been in weeks. Hope moved to her immediately, checking her pulse, running a gentle hand down her neck. "She's improving," Hope said softly. Frank leaned on the stall door. "Because of you." Hope shook her head. "Because of us. You kept this ranch alive long before I ever arrived." Frank looked at her, throat tightening. "Barely." Hope met his eyes, her expression steady. "Barely is still alive." Before he could respond, heavy footsteps sounded outside. The barn door swung open, and Elias stepped inside, shaking snow from his coat. His stare landed first on Frank, then on Hope, and finally on the mare, alive and recovering despite everything. "So it's true," Elias said. "You've got help." Frank's jaw tensed. "What do you want?" Eliza smirked. "To see how long your luck holds. Winter's not done yet, and neither are your debts." Hope stepped forward, voice firm. "Threats won't fix anything, Elias." He glanced at her with dismissive amusement. "I wasn't talking to you." Frank took a step closer, eyes darkening. "Then talk carefully." For a long moment, only the wind outside filled the silence. Elias scanned the barn one last time, then shrugged. "We'll see how long this place stands." He left without another word. Hope let out a slow breath. "He enjoys intimidation more than truth. He enjoys watching things break," Frank muttered. "And he thinks this ranch is next." Hope touched his arm. "Then prove him wrong." Frank looked down at her hand resting on his sleeve, small, steady, grounding. Something warm stirred inside him, cutting through the cold that had settled in his chest for years. They finished the evening chores side by side. As they walked back toward the house, the ranch behind them looked tired but no longer defeated. Smoke rose from the chimney, glowing faintly against the icy dusk. Inside, Hope lit a lamp and hung her coat. Frank hesitated near the door, watching her move through the quiet room as if she belonged there. "You know," he said softly, "when you arrived, I thought you were here to survive the winter. Nothing more. Hope turned to him. Frank, I didn't come here to survive. I came here to rebuild. Their eyes held steady, searching, unguarded. Outside, the wind howled, but for the first time, the house felt strong against it. The storm arrived before dawn. A roaring white wall that swallowed the plains and hammered the ranch with violent winds. Frank woke to the sound of shutters, rattling and snow beating against the windows like thrown gravel. The house trembled, the air sharp and cold. Hope was already up, wrapping a scarf around her neck. Animals first, she said. No hesitation, no fear. Frank grabbed his coat and followed her into the storm. Outside, the world was nothing but swirling snow. The wind shoved them sideways, stealing breath from their lungs. Frank pushed ahead, keeping Hope close as they fought their way toward the barn. Snow stung their faces, their boots sinking deep with every step. When they reached the barn doors, Frank forced one open, and they stumbled inside, breathless. The animals were restless, stamping, snorting, frightened by the storm's roar. Hope went straight to the mare, whispering calm words, gentling her touch. Frank checked the structure, listening for cracking beams, looking for loose boards. We may need to reinforce the north wall, he said over the wind. If it gives, the roof could follow. Hope didn't hesitate. Tell me what to do. They worked quickly, dragging planks, hammering braces into place, tightening ropes around beams. The cold bit through their gloves. Their fingers stiff and burning, but they kept going. Each crash of wind pressed the barn harder, as if the storm itself were trying to tear everything away. At one point, a loud crack split through the rafters. The mare shrieked. Hope spun toward Frank, eyes wide. What was that? South beam, Frank said grimly. Hold the lantern. She did, despite the tremor in her hands. Frank climbed onto a support rail and hammered a brace into place. The storm screamed outside, shaking the boards beneath his feet. When he jumped down, Hope grabbed his arm. You can't keep doing this alone. I'm not alone, he said, breath fogging the cold air. The words were simple, but the weight of them stopped her. For a moment, they stood in the dim lantern light, snow pounding the roof. Animals shifting nervously. The whole world reduced to cold wood and warm breath. Then another gust hit, fierce enough to push dust and straw across the floor. Hope squared her shoulders. We need to check the feed stores. If the storm lasts all day, the animals will panic. Frank nodded. Together, they moved through the barn, securing loose crates, covering sacks, tightening hinges. Hope's movements were quick, practiced, confident, far more than any mail-order bride should have been capable of. Frank noticed but said nothing. By the time they finished, the wind had grown even stronger, shaking the barn with each blast. Hope wiped her brow, breath uneven. If the roof holds, we can get through this. Frank stepped closer, lowering his voice. It will hold, because you're here. Hope looked up at him, eyes bright, cheeks flushed, courage shining through the fear. Hours passed with the storm unrelenting, each gust stronger than the one before. Frank and Hope moved, constantly checking supports, calming the animals, clearing drifts from the inner walkway so the doors wouldn't jam. Their energy thinned, but neither slowed. At midday, a violent crack split through the barn like a gunshot. Dust rained from the rafters. Frank jerked toward the sound. That came from outside, he said. They pushed through the barn doors into the blinding white. The wind slammed into them, forcing them to lean forward to stay upright. Snow whipped across the yard, erasing the fences and fields in swirling sheets. Visibility shrank to a few feet. Hope pointed toward the far corner of the house. Something's wrong, look. A section of the roof had begun to peel upward under the pressure of the storm. Shingles ripped loose, spinning into the wind like dark birds. Frank cursed it under his breath. If that lifts, the whole side could collapse. Without waiting, he ran toward the ladder propped against the wall. Hope followed, grabbing the bottom to steady it as he climbed. The wind howled, nearly knocking him sideways. Snow stung his face. His hands burned from cold. "Frank!" Hope shouted over the storm. "Be careful!" He reached the damaged section and forced his weight onto the boards, trying to press them back into place. The wind fought him like a living thing. He hammered nails into the plank, his fingers numb. Beneath him, Hope held the ladder with all her strength, boots braced in the snow. A sudden blast hit, stronger than any before. The ladder jerked, ripping from Hope's grip. She threw herself forward, grabbing it again just as it slid. Frank lost his footing and slammed down onto the roof, the edge crumbling beneath him. "Frank!" Hope cried, voice breaking. "I'm fine," he shouted, though the world spun beneath him. He crawled back to stability, hammer still in hand. Hope's face was pale, fear raw in her eyes. "Please don't fall. I can't lose you." The words struck him harder than the wind. With renewed determination, Frank forced the last plank down and secured it. When he finally descended, Hope caught him the moment his boots hit the ground, hands trembling as they gripped his coat. "You could have died," she whispered. "But I didn't," he said softly. "Because you were here." For a moment, the storm was only a distant roar. Hope's breath warmed the cold space between them. Their foreheads touched briefly, tenderly before another gust forced them to move. "Come on," Frank said. "The animals need us." They hurried back to the barn, fighting the wind step by step. Inside, the air was warmer, the lantern still burning. Hope rested her hand on Frank's arm, steadying herself. "We made it through the worst," she said. He looked at her, truly looked, and felt something settle in his chest. Something strong, something certain. "We made it," he agreed, voice low. "Together."